If you have an interest in horses and love learning more about horses, the horse industry, teaching, or even managing your own horse business, then you're in the right place. We would love you to join us on our mission, which is to improve the lives of horses around the world through the education of riders, handlers, and trainers. So get comfortable, listen in, and enjoy.
Hi, I would like to introduce your host, Glenys Cox, who will explain what this podcast is all about.
Thanks, Ellie. The podcast Horse Chats is about people who are interested in learning about horses. So we've got interviews with equine industry experts. Some of these people could be experts within the industry, like those who can build arena, have floats, trailers, saddlers, people who build stables or have got a business within the horse industry. But we've also got lots of people who are going to be talking about horses, some people who teach and train horses. So there should be lots of tips and information about those who are interested in learning about horses and with an open mind.
Okay, so tell me about yourself. When did you start to ride and teach?
Oh, gee, when I was 4, I had a younger sister, so I started to teach her, not necessarily about horses, but just as an older sister does. I think I've had a love of horses since I can remember. We had a lot of horses around us in a little bit outside suburbia, and there was always horses around. When I got my first horse, I went to Pony Club. It wasn't until I was 15, so I went to Pony Club, and it was there that I met a qualified instructor. I'd been in Pony Club a couple of years, and she'd gone over to the UK and become involved in the British Horse Society training system. So I started off, that was my first qualification, is to go to the UK and become qualified with the British Horse Society.
Okay, so who's influenced your teaching?
Oh, gee. When I was younger, really early, I think Vince Corvey was probably the first person who really influenced it. And then Coleman de Bolger, who used to come over a fair bit. I was interested in show jumping, so he'd taught the New Zealand Olympic team and come to Australia and did quite a lot of clinics in Australia, and I was a regular there. Then when I went to the UK, I went to Crabbett Park. So Brian Young, who was a fellow of the British Horse Society, he was influential there. Him and his teachings, throughout Crabbett Park. Crabbett Park was actually a place where Lady Wentworth started breeding Arabians, so that was a fairly famous place just in itself. I think the big thing that I learnt from Brian Young was that he used to teach instructors because he liked teaching instructors because it leveraged the influence on the amount of horses that would benefit from his teaching. So rather than teaching individual riders or individual horses, he said if you teach instructors, then you teach the instructors to go out and teach their individual riders and individual horses, and then you have more influence within the horse world. It was after I was in the UK, I met someone from the US, and I went over and worked at Rocking Horse Ranch, which is where I really started to become involved in eventing. Jim Graham, who was on the United States Equestrian team at the time, he used to come down regularly and do clinics at Rocking Horse Ranch. And then when I returned back to Australia, Tony Manker, this is on a more local level, Tony Manker was the state coach. He continued my love of eventing and I continued there. Sandra Pearson-Adams has also had a lot of influence with me. She's a fellow of the British Horse Society and, quite a lot of work with her, and also Lee Beerman. And then I was on the state squad for eventing, so Edgar Lichtwark and Mark Phillips were also instructors there when I was on the state squad. But there's been a lot of other good horsemen that I've learnt from. Tom Doyle, who's a local vet, I rode and competed his horse for a while, learnt a lot from him. Cole Williamson, who I worked for as a racehorse trainer, used to break in a lot of racehorses, very good horseman. And just a little bit more recently, I've become a bit more involved with Andrew McLean and some of his teachings.
Okay, I've heard you have a mission related to horses, so please tell us some more about your mission.
Okay, I think my mission, and probably the mission of Horse Chats as well, is to improve the condition of horses around the world through the education of their riders, handlers and trainers.
That's a pretty big mission. So how does it relate to this podcast?
I think if we can improve safety so that more people ride, that's probably the main thing. I think as there's more awareness of horses, of safety, then there's going to be less accidents. So the people who I've asked to come on are those people who've got an affinity with horses. So not people who just come in and treat them as motor cars or whatever, but really listen to horses, really have got that affinity with them, that they understand, if they're doing training, even people that come in at a grassroots level who are out there in the trenches knowing that horses aren't perfect and they do lots of things out of the box, those are the sort of coaches who are more safety aware, because they have to be safety aware. They have to be safety aware because horses do things out of the box, I suppose. There's always something to be aware of. And I think as we become more concerned about safety and the welfare of the horse, we're also interested in the welfare of the rider, which gives the riders more confidence, so that generates interest in the sport. So if we talk about the ABCs of riding, is the attitude, balance and control, and by attitude I mean confidence and the balance and the control, then I think that more people will continue to ride and more people will be more interested in horses.
Okay, so what is actually going to be in the podcast?
It's going to be community driven. So we're going to start off with the interviews, and the people that we're interviewing or I'll be interviewing will give me tips and learning and, maybe throw out some challenges for the people in the horse world. But I think if you contact us at editor@horsechats.com, if you've got other suggestions of the way that this podcast is going to be shaped, it really is up to the listeners and the people within the horse world, so that we can give them the sort of podcast that they're after and they'd like to continually listen to.
Right, thank you, Glennis.
Thank you.
Remember that our comments and instructions are general in nature and do not take into consideration your individual horses or your individual ability and circumstances. If you enjoyed this podcast, then please leave your comment below.